Hi, this is Sue with Travel Changes Life, and today I want to talk about travel pricing and why it is that you'll see an advertised trip, whether it's a land or maybe an airline flight or a hotel or a cruise, and you'll see a price. When you go to book it, that price is often very different. And here's why. Every travel company, every airline, every cruise company, every hotel, every tour company, all have pricing that is what is known as lead-in pricing. And that means that it is the bare bones, bottom level, usually the very worst time of year, and usually also without any of the taxes or any of the resort fees added in, or if it's a cruise ship, none of the port fees are included, and so forth. So for instance, let's just take a cruise ship as an example. You might see, 5 days in the Caribbean for $299, and you think, well, that's a pretty good deal because it's all inclusive. It comes with all your food and so forth. But when you go to look at it, you will find that that is in the hottest part of the summer with an inside cabin that is down on the bottom of the ship and has no window at all, and does not include gratuities or shore excursions or port fees or taxes. So that $299 is called a lead-in price, and it leads you to look at the offer, but then it upsells you from there. That's why when I price something for someone, the price will sometimes come out higher than what they're seeing in the ad. In fact, it almost always does. But what I tell you is inclusive of everything that you're going to end up paying anyway. So, for instance, let's say that there is a land tour and you're going to out to see in the United States, you're going to go see some of the national parks in the West. Well, you have to think about your transportation, the ground transportation within the park, your hotel, your food. You're thinking about tips for the guides and the drivers and so forth. So you need to look at all the pricing inclusive, and that way you won't have any surprises when you book your trip and when you have to pay for the final trip before you go. You have to think about all of those little things. Also, trip insurance, which I recommend that you have. I absolutely will not book a trip without trip insurance, especially these days, and especially if you're going out of the continental United States. So keep in mind that those prices are lead-in prices, and they're there to attract you, but they're not the real deal. They're not really what you're going to pay in the end. And I look at those too. I mean, every now and then I'll see something, and we live in Florida. It's very easy for us to drive to a port and have a quick trip around the Caribbean somewhere if we want to go. It's easy for us to do. We don't have to pay flights. We just have to pay the charges at the port to park our car, right? So I'll see something that'll say, oh, 4 days in the Bahamas, $299, and I'm attracted to look, even though I know that's not the final price. First of all, that's per person. And second of all, you've got to add on port taxes and fees, and you've got to add on shore excursions. Now, that leads me to something else I want to talk about, which is making sure when you compare prices, or when I compare pricing for you, that it is really apples to apples, because oftentimes people will email me and say, I see this great deal and I think it's cheaper with this company versus this company. No, not really, because the first company is a better class of company, and it will include all of your meals and all of your shore excursions or all of your tours if, let's say, you're in the Western US somewhere. Whereas the other company does not include, maybe they include 2 meals a day, and it does not include any of your tours off to see the national parks, or if you're getting off a ship somewhere off to see what you're there to see. So you really have to think about it. It's very common in the cruise industry for the shore excursions to actually cost more than the cruise itself costs, because shore excursions, especially now, are expensive. Why are they expensive? Because many of those little shore excursion companies went out of business during the pandemic, when there was no travel for so many months, and almost going on 2 years now. There's still very little travel. Some of the ports are closed, some of the countries are closed, some of them are not open to Americans, some of them are open to Americans if they quarantine. There's all different kinds of things going on with different countries right now. So you have to think about comparing apples to apples. Sometimes the more expensive or higher end cruise companies are actually the better value, because they are more inclusive of the things that you will avail yourself of when you're on the trip. And the same thing for land companies as well. It's not just cruise companies, it's also land. If you want to talk about going on a talk tour, you're going to know that talk is going to take good care of you from soup to nuts, from the minute you start the trip till the minute you end the trip. Some other lower end tour company is you're going to be on your own for a lot more things, and that's going to ratchet the cost up while you're there. There's an old saying about it's not really what it costs to book a trip. It's what it costs to pay for the trip at the end after you've added on the other extras. And I know how to look at that for you. So this is Sue with Travel Changes Life. I invite you to do two things. First of all, subscribe, hit the subscribe button on YouTube so that you'll get notified when I post something new. And secondly, go over to travelchangeslife.com/travel news. Leave your name and email. And if you are a traveler, about twice a month, I put out a little newsletter with trends that I see, tips and resources. If I see something that I think is a good price on a really good trip, I'll let you know. But I won't bug you to death with 1,000 emails. It's usually twice a month, sometimes three times a month if something comes up that I think you really need to know. That's Travel Changes Life /travel news. This is Sue, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.